Imagine a time where women were just seen as housewives, where it was rare to see them work, and where the male race dominated over them. This occurred in Canada from 1914 to 1929. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashani Mehra, and today I'll be talking about people and events that shaped Canada's identity as a place where men and women were equal. Today I'll be mainly focusing on the years of World War I, which saw remarkable gains in women's rights. But first, let's talk about what happened before the war. Women were always known as a motherly figure, and not given the same legal and social rights as men were given. When they were married, they didn't have any rights to own their land nor handle any finances in the home. A husband was known to own his wife and children. Also, if a man died without writing a will, the wife was not allowed to inherit anything. Before the war, women were always considered to be inferior to men. But as World War I started, the role of women grew larger and larger and was more appreciated by many. In terms of the workforce, women were recruited into jobs that men left when they were fighting in the war. New jobs were created to help the war front, such as munition factories. They were the largest single employer of women. Women started performing work that was classified as men's work. At first, there was initial resistance to hiring women in factories, but the introduction to conscription made the need for women's work very urgent. Thousands worked in ammunition factories, clerical jobs, banking, and war industries. A chemical called TNT was used as an explosion agent in munitions. Women in World War I risked their lives working with poisonous substances without adequate equipment. This showed their courage, strength, and commitment when given an opportunity, and the fact that one woman has the same potential as one man. The earliest demands for equal pay for equal work began here. One woman, named Grace McPherson, stood up for women's rights and inspired many from her works on the battlefield. Her amazing work helped contribute to expanding the role of women. She was inspired and wrote to Red Cross offering her services as an ambulance driver. When she was not received a direct answer, she decided to travel to London to apply in person. As she could not afford to pay for a passage, she demanded that she should be given one for free, like the men who volunteered to serve in the war. She was eventually accepted and showed tremendous work while earning respect from her male commanders. Facing many death situations didn't stop her from doing her job. Grace McPherson was awarded the honorary rank of lieutenant in the Voluntary Aid Detachment, VAD. When she moved back to Vancouver, she helped soldiers transition back to civilian life. She fought for gender equality while showing her contributions on and off the field. Grace McPherson was a strong, determined, and courageous woman who truly helped spread equality through the nation. Even though these amazing actions were taking place, prior to 1929, women in Canada were not considered a person through a legal aspect. The British North American Act that was followed in Canada said that only qualified persons could be appointed for Senate. Emily Murphy disagreed with this statement. She organized a meeting with the four most brightest women activists she knew: Emily Murphy, Nellie McClung, Henrietta Muir Edwards, Irene Parlby, Louise McKinney. Together were known as the Famous Five. Together they signed a letter petitioning the Supreme Court to look into the matter whether a female could run for senator. While their petition was rejected, that didn't discourage them, but inspired the group of women. They later petitioned the Privacy Council, which was in England, to rule their case on October 12, 1929. After their hard work, the council agreed to allow women to run for senator. This was a life-changing moment for these women who helped make it possible. Thank you. Thank you to the thousands of women that helped support the war in factories, as nurses, ambulance drivers, petitioning for their equal rights, and the thousands more that contributed to their efforts in 1914 to 1929. Their actions shaped Canadian identity to becoming a society that was starting to be equal towards men and women. They have inspired and are continuing to inspire young boys and girls every single day. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maymuna Ray, and I'm so proud of how far Canada has come over the years. I vividly remember even before 1945 how different Canada was. The biggest thing for me was the inequality between men and women. During the Second World War was when times started to change and women were further recognized as people. Women started to have social, political, and economic impacts that eventually grew and made them equal to men. Today, gender equality is a huge part of Canadian identity, and this is my story of how that idealism came to be. First, women in this era made a much bigger impact socially. Many more ads started to be directed towards women. With men at war, propaganda would have to appeal to women now. Most of the ads encouraged women to have jobs and partake in the economy. It was also encouraged to ration food, clothing, etc. Most of the propaganda featured women, such as the Bren Gun Girl. She was a famous woman who is featured in multiple pictures, but is most famous for her poster in a factory while she makes a gun and also smokes. Another popular propaganda was Rosie the Riveter. She was famous in the We Can Do It posters. These women were inspiring and spread a new message through Canada. They told women that they can do anything they want, and especially anything that men can. This is how women started to become a bigger part of society and gained a lot of the freedoms men had, which is how they became almost equal socially. Women also had many more rights and developed politically. Women could participate in war in many more ways than in World War I. Instead of nurses or drivers, they were allowed to become mechanics. And they could work on tasks such as welding, machine repair, operating tractors, and other large engines. They also made uniforms, weapons, and ammunition. They also helped to build trucks, tanks, and airplanes. The Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service helped lead women to be officially recognized as nurses as part of the Army forces in World War II. Another way their rights developed politically was in freedoms. During the war, women could be seen dancing and talking and socializing with men. In the previous war, any woman who took part in such activities would be arrested. This showed how society had become less strict and less conservative. That resulted in women having almost the same freedoms as men, which was a step closer to gender equality. Almost. The last way women became more equal to men is economically. Women made up a little over 50% of the workforce during World War II. Also, the government needed women for the economy to keep on running because men were at war, so women needed to fill all the empty jobs. Women had to step up and be the head of the house while their husbands were at war. They started to enjoy working and wanted to continue. Sometimes they would have to move their children due to high bombing threats. They started to have their own money, therefore being able to make their own household decisions. They didn't want to just be cleaning the house anymore. Being equal economically still hadn't been reached, however, women were closer because they had many jobs and gained power. All in all, during and after World War II era was when women gained many more freedoms. They still weren't 100% equal to men, but they had freedom as in political freedoms, social freedoms, and economic freedoms. Gender equality would be added to the Canadian identity today thanks to all contributions women have made since World War II.